Hello everyone, today I'm in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood of New York City, and I'm going to be beginning my tour on Restaurant Row, which is also known as 46th Street, and it's this street right here. And looking towards the east, we're not too far from Times Square, which is about 3 to 4 blocks up the street there. And looking towards the west, it's another maybe 3 to 4 blocks to the Hudson River. And just a little bit of background about Hell's Kitchen. The term was first said to have been used in 1835 when Davy Crockett said, "In my part of the country, when you meet an Irishman, you find a first-rate gentleman. But here, these are worse than savages. They are too mean to swab Hell's Kitchen." And thus the term Hell's Kitchen was used ever since, and that was almost 200 years ago. And things began to get better here with basically the rest of greater Manhattan in the 1980s with gentrification and basically the increasing of rents and real estate prices. And now Hell's Kitchen is probably better known for its restaurants and shopping as opposed to a rough place, which it apparently for the most part is not. And here on Restaurant Row, there's just dozens and dozens of restaurants. Some of them have fallen victim to the hard times and the coronavirus, and that appears to be the case for the first restaurant on my list here. This is the Brazier Athena, and this is from the sign, it's a dinner and brunch restaurant, and looks like it's permanently closed. And from their website, let me see if I look inside a little bit, a lot of dust everywhere. And looking at their website, they used to be a 4-star French restaurant, and they've been closed for over a year now, since the start of the coronavirus. And looking across the street, this is 46th Street, and there is the Rue Plaza New York Times Square Hotel. And I'm not really sure why they would call it the Times Square Hotel, because we're still about 3 blocks from Times Square. But this is listed as a 4-star hotel, and currently a room here costs about $130 per night. And most of the buildings in this area, they're showing up as being built in the early 1900s, so they're pretty old. And a 1-bedroom apartment here will cost about $1,900 to $2,000 a month. That's pretty much in the range where they start. And some of the buildings are actually considerably older. Off to the left, here's a trash pile as always, but here's a Lutheran Church. And this church was built in 1923, but it does look quite a bit older than 1923. It's just a block and concrete church. And continuing along 46, some more restaurants. Here's a Frankie and Johnny's Steakhouse, and they are listed as a 4-star steak restaurant. And a New York strip steak here is $48, and the sides are extra. And across the street, there's a Barbetta Restaurant, and that's showing up as a Italian restaurant. And that too is a 4-star business, and a pasta plate there is about $25 to $30. And just a lot of little restaurants here. It's a Joe Allen restaurant, and it appears to have an A rating. But the next restaurant, this looks a little bit more interesting. This is a Brazil restaurant, and this is also a 4-star business, and it looks like they have a lot of seafoods and steaks here. A New York strip steak topped with rice and beans is $26. And the next restaurant is a Chinese restaurant. This is called Dim Sum Palace.
Yeah, 6 o'clock. I finished maybe here from here. 11.
And a whole bunch of other restaurants. Here's a Le Rivage restaurant. It's showing online as a 4.5-star French restaurant, and a pan-seared rainbow trout here is $28. And here's a Spanish restaurant. This is the Mesan Sevilla restaurant, and online it's showing as a 4-star Spanish restaurant, and entrees here start in the $20 to $30 range. And because of the coronavirus, most of these restaurants have the outdoor seating. And to the left here is a Bardo Pizza and Bar restaurant, and that is listed as a 4.5-star bar and pizza restaurant. A personal pizza there will cost about $13. So there's just dozens and dozens of restaurants in this area. Up ahead, here's a Japanese steak bar, and let's look at their menu here real quick. A fried baby octopus is $10.
Were you ready to throw it all away?
Yes. So we went to get.
And this next restaurant is called Hold the Fast, and that's showing up as a burger and chicken wing restaurant. A classic burger there is $14. And here's a sushi restaurant. This one is open, but it looks pretty small inside. And let's see here. A sushi roll party, $65. Doesn't say how many people that would serve. Anyhow, continuing on. We are now approaching 9th Avenue. And across the street there's a Yum Yum Thai restaurant. And across the street there's a Panda Express. And there's just a lot more restaurants and bars in this area. Now walking south on 9th Street, and off to the left here's another Thai restaurant. Looks like it's closed on weekdays. And here's a bunch of vacant retail space off to the left. It looks like this was a Chinese restaurant and it's now vacant. And here's a fresh tea and juice restaurant, followed by Hell's Fire Pizzeria. Doesn't look like, a giant can of canned tomatoes there. I thought pizzerias are supposed to use somewhat fresh ingredients. And now crossing 45th Street. Looks like there is an accident here. And this restaurant is called the 5 Napkin Burger. And they are a burger restaurant and a classic caramelized burger with caramelized onion and rosemary garlic is $18 there. And this is a Nisa Italian restaurant. And here's a coffee shop. This is called Gregory's Coffee, and that does look to be closed. Let's see if I could look through the window here. A lot of these stores are closed. It doesn't look like New York is doing too well with the drop-off in tourism. It doesn't seem like the people that live here can support this many restaurants. They almost need the tourists coming here to keep everything going. So hopefully things will pick up soon now that the coronavirus is nearing an end. Now crossing 44th Street, and off to the left here's a Chipotle Restaurant. That's just a franchised Mexican restaurant. And across the street a few other restaurants. There's a Mamma Mia, and that's listed as a 4-star Italian restaurant, and a lasagna dinner there will cost about $19. And to the left here's a diner. This is called the Westway Diner, and this is listed as a Greek and Italian diner, but it looks like they serve just about everything here. And a T-bone steak and eggs is $19. And it looks like another Mexican restaurant here. And almost at the corner of 43rd Street. And this large brick building here on the corner of 44th and 9th Street. First I thought this was just another apartment complex, and it's actually showing up as public housing. And it's kind of interesting. It's actually supposed to be public housing just for people in the performing arts. And it's federal based, so it's based on the Section 8 program. And basically what that is if you're low income, you only have to pay about 30% of your income towards rent. And it's a pretty good deal for people that in general don't make that much money. And Hell's Kitchen doesn't really have that many public housing units. It's basically this building here, and then there's one more behind there. And you pretty much would have to go to the Lower East Side to find most of the public housing, the kind that people think about when they go to New York. It's owned by the city of New York. There's a lot of it on the Lower East Side. But overall, for the whole city of New York, it's about 10% of people live in public housing, or they get Section 8, and that's through the federal government. And now crossing 42nd Street. And the building across the street, that's a hotel. It's called the Pod Hotel, and that's showing up as a 4-star hotel. And currently a room there is about $90 per night. And from this vantage point, I could also get a little bit better view of the second public housing project, which is that tall brick building right in the center there. And these two buildings here, both basically the exact same, and they're both public housing for the performing artists. And I'm now getting towards the southern end of Hell's Kitchen and start to get more into the Hudson Yards area. And Hudson Yards is actually kind of interesting. They're doing a lot of construction, and let's see if I get a little bit better view. Those big skyscrapers there, that's part of the Hudson Yards development, and it's basically a $25 billion condo, hotel, and retail development that's being built. And there's about 16 skyscrapers that are currently being built there, and it's just a very massive project. And now crossing 41st Street, and this garage area here off to the left, that appears to be for the public buses. And I'm also getting close to the Lincoln Tunnel, and that's for people going to New Jersey. It's a little bit of a maze in here, the streets. So I'm certainly glad I'm not driving. Much easier to walk around. You can't get lost as quickly. And in the center there's some of the buildings for the Hudson Yards project. There must be 6 or 7 skyscrapers just right there. And I'm now about to cross 40th Street. And off to the left, it looks like a Two Brothers Pizzeria, and they have $1 slices of pizza there. And another closed business. Some more restaurants in here. Here's a little convenience store.
No, mi amor, I'm glad.
And it looks like some closed businesses as well. And here's a Lincoln Gourmet Deli. Let me check out their menu real quick. A Philly cheesesteak sandwich is $7.95. It looks pretty good. And as you can probably tell, the restaurants here start to thin out, and it starts to get more into maybe industrial, commercial space. And it looks like there's people living in these buildings as well up on top, the older ones. And it's like that in most of New York. The ground floor is used for retail and the upper floors are residential. And another Italian restaurant to the left. And here's another closed business. Let me see what this one was. This was Hero Boy and originators of the 6-foot hero. Looks like a sandwich shop, and that was a 4-star business, but it's now closed. And this traffic off to the right, these people are probably going to New Jersey through the Lincoln Tunnel. It kind of wraps around somewhere nearby this roadway for the Lincoln Tunnel. I'm pretty sure it's down to the right. And here's a farmer's market to the left. Didn't really have too much produce or anything outside like they do in Chinatown. And here's another closed shop. And we're getting closer to the Hudson Yards project here. And here's another pizza store off to the left. Followed by a sushi restaurant and a Thai noodle bar. Let's check out the Thai noodles. A chicken garlic noodle soup is $11.95. And some more vacant retail space. And it looks like we're now in Hudson Yards, or at least this deli says we are. It's the H-Yard Gourmet Deli. And there's one skyscraper that's under construction. That's either going to be a condo or a hotel, probably.
Way better than the other one.
And across the street, that looks to be the corporate headquarters for Peloton, and that's the exercise bike manufacturer. And continuing south along 9th Street, here's a Uncle Jack's restaurant and bar. Let's check this out here. Jumbo shrimp cocktail is $21. A tuna, yellowfin tuna is $32. So it seems like of the maybe dozen or so restaurants I've checked out so far, I would say about 90% of them are in the $30 range, just to eat dinner. And I guess that's about maybe average for maybe everywhere else. I mean, it's not excessive. I've certainly seen places that are more, such as Las Vegas, for example, across the street. Here's a pretty good view of these two massive buildings right here being built, and they look about exactly the same, and they're the same height. And they also have a pretty nice mall over here as well, so I'll check that out real fast and see whatever else along the way. Looks like some interesting old buildings across the street. Don't really have time to look that up, but that looks to be a church. And sometimes they make it simple for you if they just put the sign outside, and that is a St. Michael's Church. So you got a lot of these older buildings, and they're just surrounded by these new massive skyscrapers that are being built. And these buildings off to the left and right, they look to be residential. I'm just kind of guessing like that because there's air conditioning units that are sticking out of each room. So that kind of probably means that they're residential. And to the right here is a little supermarket. This is called River Food Market. And there's also a Whole Foods store around here. And I've actually overall, I've had better experience just going to Whole Foods, even though it's more commercialized. But as far as prices go, well, Whole Foods is expensive almost no matter where you go. But the smaller grocery stores, I found quite a few of them, they don't list their prices on their products, so you kind of have to guess what everything is. And overall, I've just had better experiences buying fresher milk and produce at Whole Foods. But if you do happen to be in Chinatown though, and that's Chinatown, New York City, I would suggest buying produce there because everything is much cheaper than Whole Foods. And they also have quite a few times too, they'll have street vendors here in Manhattan, and it might not be as cheap as Chinatown, but it's still cheaper than going to Whole Foods. And the thing with like buying produce, you could always sort of tell before you buy it whether it's still good. And this is the Hudson Yards development. These are the two massive skyscrapers being built. And I'm now on 10th Street, and I'm walking south, and right next to this skyscraper here off to the left, that is a new mall. And the last time I was in here, it was just about empty. So I'm not really sure if this mall is meant more for tourist people or if it's for people that live in Manhattan, but was not very busy. And they also have a few other skyscrapers right behind here, and you can't really see, but they have a hotel and a condo skyscraper building, and they both do look to be empty. So I think these projects were started quite a while ago, back maybe when things were a bit better. And now crossing 10th Street. And this shopping mall is just simply called The Shops. And for the most part, it's mostly a lot of high-end European shops. And I'm now entering the shops at the Hudson Yards. This does look to be very new. Looks like it was very recently built. And this is a several story mall. It's at least 3, maybe 4 stories. And the first stores here to the left is a Sally Hirschberger. And to the right, this is a art gallery. Looks like a private art gallery. And more shopping to the left, a Molten Brown of London. What does Molten Brown sell? Looks like women's perfumes. Followed by a Brooks Brothers, Tiffany and Company. So basically a lot of high-end retailers. Here's a jeweler's. And it looks like some women's fashion. And that will conclude my tour of Hell's Kitchen and the Hudson Yards. Thank you.